Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're going to be doing another State of Gaming. This is where we're taking a look at the handheld war. And yes, it is turning into a war. It's not just simple and just a few little companies anymore. This is something that Nintendo has truly kicked off with the Wii U, improving it with the Switch One. And oh my word, is it really cooking up? So, we're going to go through the companies that we know, kind of some of the specs of some of this, what some are focusing on compared to others, and then we're going to kind of go into why this is becoming a war. We're going to go over some statistics of millennials, Generation Z, and Alpha, and etc. And we're going to cap it all off at the end. So, like and sub, all that jazz. Let's go ahead and get into this. So, gaming handhelds, again, they're not really a new idea. We had the PSP, we had Game Boys, we had the Vita, but we've always seen graphics usually be worse on these than the console. Lately, there's been some handhelds, or mobile consoles, if you want to call them, and basically they can play console and PC games. Not as good of quality, but still they're pretty good, and they're pretty close with even higher frames per second too. So far, we have Lenovo, we have Asus, MSI, Valve, Logitech, Nintendo, of course. We now have Acer. That's another one. And these are all coming out with their own handhelds in even different versions too. And these price range basically from 300 all the way to like 1,200 bucks. They can get pretty spendy. Most of them are somewhere between 5 and 700, maybe 800. Many of these have internal storage and hardware to actually run the game locally. It's not a streaming thing. You just download the actual files to your hard drive, just like a console or just like your PC, and then you can run it locally right there. With Game Pass, these can also run on stream. It can also be streamed as well with the cloud and all of that jazz. There's also the Xbox app when it is able to be released, so that you can actually stream your games from the Xbox store outside of Game Pass. And so, yeah, you really don't need a subscription for that. That's already becoming more or less a part of PC already. And wherever that's going to be spreading to, eventually this is going to be going to Android phones. And for right now, Google is blocking it on the Play Store. But again, that's not going to last forever. We also have Steam Link and also like third-party launchers. So there's actually a lot of stuff you can actually really do with these handhelds, and it really opens up a pretty big expansion of the availability, really, of all of these types of games. Now we have huge players that are entering the handheld space. We have Sony, Xbox, and Tencent. Sony made about 90 billion last year. Xbox, or excuse me, more or less Microsoft, has a $3 trillion price tag to their company, and then Tencent is roughly worth, again, about $500 billion. None of these players are small. They're all huge. Sony has patched the PlayStation Portal right now to actually play PlayStation 5 games without the console. They said that, hey, that was the idea all along, but why did they have to patch it with the console if honestly that was going to be a function later? They said they wanted to, quote, roll it out slowly, but I think really there was no word of this during launch or even beforehand or even an upcoming feature. There weren't even any leaks on this. And so, yeah, I really don't think it was actually going to be something that they were planning on, but they did figure out a way to actually do it. The Portal wasn't really selling that well. The scalpers were getting murdered on it. You could find the portals. You can still find portals actually in the store, whether it's Walmart or Fred Meyer, Target, wherever. You can generally find these. Some places easier than others. But now you can actually play the PlayStation Portal with basically all of the PS5 games that you actually get all off of the store without having the console, which is great. As long as you have an internet connection, you can actually do this. Currently only available with PlayStation Premium members. This is roughly about 8 million people that have paid for this subscription service, as this is in beta for the moment. But yeah, this is going to become a mainstay feature. Eventually, it will make it to all PlayStation Portal owners. And yeah, if you're kind of looking for a cheap way to actually have a handheld, $200 is pretty much as cheap as you can go. Which is honestly pretty amazing. But this is going to be streamed only. You actually have to stream the game to your portal because again, it was designed to run off of the console, which has a streaming feature anyway, as long as you're basically hooked up to the same Wi-Fi and your PlayStation 5 console is on. But yeah, there really is no internal storage. That's not what this is going to be. It's just going to be streaming only. Sony is currently working on a mobile app at the moment, which would be perfect. Again, this would allow more or less better access, not just for the portal, but also for other handhelds as well. At least that's the rumor, quote unquote, right now. But it honestly sounds pretty solid. So I'm having it in my news. Also, Sony has said that they're working on their own actual handheld. No release date. It's still going to be years until we actually probably get anything or we see anything on this. But yeah, the actual handheld itself is probably going to be somewhat competitive to what's already out there on the market. Xbox 2, they of course have Game Pass. They also have the Xbox app to access and stream games that you've purchased. And they've also said that they're working on a handheld. They currently have, quote, prototypes in development. This isn't completely a greenlit idea, but with everybody else jumping on board, Xbox is, of course, going to want their portion of the pie. And so, yeah, they're going to probably have their own handheld coming out maybe in 26 or something like that, with it being still in prototype stages toward the end of 2024. It still sounds like there's going to be some bugs to work out, some things to deal with. Of course, you have to mass produce the thing, and then you have to get it out there to retailers. So, or buy it directly from them. I imagine that's going to be an option too. But yeah, being able to get either Game Pass and the Xbox app and any hardware is really going to open it up to any interested users, and really anyone that's on the internet. Because again, this can be tablet, phones, your Amazon Fire Stick TV, even some TVs are coming pre-installed with Game Pass and access to these smart TVs, bigger ones. Samsung has already been doing it. We also found out that some LGs are going to start doing it starting in 2025 this year. And yeah, it allows you to play any of your AAA games basically. And then yeah, this makes any device your console. So their thing is going to be, hey, if you want your own beefier handheld, you can do that. If you want mobile, that's available too. Your console, your PC, whatever. And yeah, they're really trying to get into any type of market that exists. And yeah, they really have to make it work because hardware is, of course, expensive. But again, they're hoping to sell those peripherals with Game Pass, the Xbox app, and everything else. And anything else they can sell you. Tencent too, as well. They have officially announced their own handheld. It's the biggest screen so far. It is mammoth. It is mammoth. It's basically 11 inches, 10.8 or 10.9 inches. It does have detachable controllers on the sides. I'll call them Joy-Cons for this video. And then there's also a glasses-free 3D screen. So that's interesting. They do make some monitors with this technology, but actually being able to have this I think it was also on the Nintendo 3DS as well. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please. But yeah, there's also going to be a 3D technology built into the screen without needing the glasses. So that's going to be interesting. Hopefully, though, if you wish, you can turn that on or off, which would be great. And then, yeah, now we have the Nintendo Switch 2. This will basically, yeah, it's going to be an improved Switch. We've already seen that at this point. And it's also going to be a handheld. It's going to be bigger. And so, yeah, they're also probably going to be sporting a 9-inch, or, well, like 8.5-inch screen, something like that. That's going to be comparable. And it's also going to have the Joy-Cons that are going to be magnetic. But this is interesting, though, because the Switch 2 is still the first handheld that's also a console and a handheld. So they're still going to be the first, but yeah, the handheld market is really steaming up. Also, I have to add this. I don't have this in my notes, but Acer also announced the Nitro and the Nitro Blaze. These also are handhelds, one smaller than the other. One's basically 8 inches, the other one's basically 11. And yeah, again, they're just getting more into the market. So we have a massive push right now of what is that, roughly 8 or 9 companies that's making their own handheld. Again, some are just streaming, some have multiple various versions. We also saw too that the Lenovo S Go or the Go S, whichever way it is, one's going to have a Steam OS built into it, and then the other two are going to have Xbox Game Pass. So, though these are not going to be married, these are not going to be together on the same platform. Though I'm sure somebody could figure that out. But yeah, things are really heating up on this because now we have two devices that actually are basically a Steam Deck, and then we have Game Pass going all over the place, and then we have all of the others out there too that are trying to get into the handheld space. So really, why does this all matter? Okay, there's a lot of companies dumping a lot of money. You got other companies doing R&D. You have some companies that are already on their second, third, fourth generation of handhelds. Trying to blanket the market as much as they can. So why does this all matter? Well, this will indicate the future of gaming. And it's whoa, Tread, like that's a pretty big claim, but no, honestly, seriously, let's dig into the specs of the generation of gamers right now. Right now, the biggest generation in gaming is millennials. It's about 42%, and everyone else is broken down from Gen Xers, Gen Z, and Gen A. Gen A are like really young kids. And so for right now, millennials, we really care about physical media. We grew up with consoles, and that's what we want to play on. That's what we grew up with. It's the nostalgia. It's what we're comfortable with. That's generally what we want. And so we're not usually focused on physical media for TV shows or music like Gen X is. And so we don't care as much. But again, we grew up with physical games, so that's what we want to have. Gen Z, on the other hand, they don't really care about physical games, like at all. And again, these are like kind of like mid to young 20s teenagers a little bit. And yeah, they don't really care about having physical games. Again, they just didn't grow up with physical games. Everything is digital for them basically when they started. You got mobile on top of that. You got PC that hasn't had physical games in like forever. And yeah, that's just the world that they grew up in. So again, they don't really care about this whole, generally speaking, keep physical copies, etc., blah, blah, blah. Most copies sold anyway are all digital copies. We're talking like over 90%. Like, let me say that again. All copies sold of all video games, all platforms, are over 90% digital. So yeah, the war's over on that too. It's not going to be coming back. It's just going to slowly get worse until everything's digital, just like on PC. But they do care about somewhat the console and the PC. They still like having a physical box there that they play on a screen or their monitor, TV, whatever, and they still actually enjoy that. Now, Gen Alpha, which would roughly be like the age of my kids, they don't really care about what they play on. As long as they have the game, as long as they have access, they're happy. And again, that's what they grew up with. So they grew up with the live services, with the cross-platform games, the cross-saves, the cross-gen, whatever. Like, basically, as long as you can play, they're happy. They don't really care what the box is. They don't really care if it's streamed. They don't really care if it's a physical set of files on their hard drive. And this is really interesting. This is where it actually really changes. And so they're used to handhelds, at least handheld devices, okay, in school, at home, while they're waiting. Like, they've just had phones everywhere. Schools have already had, for almost a decade, had like entire sets of tablets that they can have. We've had smart boards and smart screens. And again, this has just been the world that Gen Alpha has been growing up in. And it's all like this. They don't really use books as much anymore. Everything's digital and through a screen and just a set of files. And again, they don't really care where it's coming from. It's all just the same to them. Gen Alpha for right now, 94% of their game enthusiasts for their generation, for entertainment, they're, or excuse me, I'm saying that incorrectly. Gen Alpha, 94% say they're game enthusiasts, which is pretty wild. So, like, almost the entire generation basically plays video games. They're not really as interested in sports or writing or painting or watching movies. They're into video games. So, they're probably the biggest whole demographic of a whole generation that loves a particular form of entertainment, which is pretty insane. Millennials, on the other hand, roughly over 50%. They were the first. We were the first generation. Millennials. We were the first ones to actually play. With half of us playing video games, we were at 66%. Gen Z, by the way, is at 80% of them. Actually like play video games, and 77% of them use mobile devices to play games. Again, millennials not as much, Gen Z more, and then Alpha is basically at like 100%, which is crazy. And yeah, Gen Alpha is of course higher for gaming on mobile. So again, it makes sense that it's like, okay, if we have two generations where we're looking at like 80-90% of the whole generation that actually plays video games is gaming on handheld hardware or through their phones or tablets, then yeah, we can kind of see now. It's like, okay, handhelds are kind of a big deal. But again, we want to be able to bolster the hardware. We actually want to make the screen better, whatever, so that they play the games on our device instead of their phones from Samsung, Google, or Apple, which makes total sense, right? You got to provide something that's better than your competitor. Now, this is where it really starts getting pretty crazy. So, why exactly are Sony and Xbox and other companies making handhelds? Again, this is where the future of gaming is going. The younger generations, they basically play video games for entertainment. The younger generations, they play on handhelds. And so this is where it's going. So it makes perfect sense that handhelds are going to continue to grow and actually, at some day, outsell the console. Again, I know that sounds crazy, but we already have the biggest selling console is the Nintendo Switch and the Switch 2. I guarantee you the Switch 2 is going to sell like hotcakes, especially if it's $350. If it's cheaper than expectations, people are going to run out and grab it. And this is basically a handheld. That's what it's set up for. So they've already sold 158 million handhelds already, which if you want a little bit of a better gaming experience, you can dock it and play that way. But again, yeah, it's a handheld. And they're just improving that aspect with the Switch 2. For right now, 9.6% is the average return on investment through 2032. So that's almost 10% return on investment every year through 2032. That's pretty nuts. That is some really high growth there. Also, the reports are saying that, that growth basically in the to the 30s is going to be at roughly 8 billion now, all the way to 19 billion in 2030, 2032, sometime in there. And two, consoles are going to fall short this generation. The younger generations, again, they're not really caring what they're playing on, folks. They are going to literally, change gaming. And again, we want to blame the consoles a lot, or the companies a lot of the time, for saying like, oh yeah, you guys are changing this or whatever. No, they're looking at where the buying behaviors are for the younger kids. And of course, they're going to grow up and they're going to continue to have their habits. And they're going to keep them going. And that's why all this is happening. Now, do I completely think consoles are going away? No. But I think when there's basically no demand anymore, I think then consoles will basically go away. That means we're all dead, and then Gen Z and Gen Alpha and Gen Beta and Jen Charlie and all of that, they're going to be taking over the gaming industry as time goes on. And then it will be all handhelds. And then it'll be something else. It'll be holographic. Maybe you can take some little drip with an IV and you can like go flip right into Dream World or something crazy. And you don't even need hardware. You just basically get jacked in with your mind and go into some crazy Tron Matrix thing and go play video games. Maybe that'll be the future. Wow, yeah, that'd be pretty wild, wouldn't it? Hope your mind doesn't get corrupted. That'd be pretty bad. There'd be no fixing that. So honestly, Nintendo, they're going to continue to make this kind of hybrid console system until it doesn't work for them anymore, until they see better profits or better buying opportunities somewhere else. But yeah, they're probably going to continue to do this. And I could see the Switch 3. I could see the Switch 4. I could see this kind of becoming a permanent thing. Because again, if Gen Z and Gen Alpha and Beta 2 probably are just going to be pushing this way, if they're just going to be going with mobile, if that's what they play on, they're not interested in the PC as much, or they're not interested in the console as much, which millennials are really the last ones, then yeah, why not just keep it going? Maybe Nintendo would eventually make some different versions or different improvements, like with the OLED screen, which I'm expecting with the Switch 2. And maybe 3 or 4 years from now, they'll have the Switch 2, and then they'll have the Switch 2 OLED model to sell you for an extra $100 or $50. And but yeah, we'll see. And yeah, Sony and Xbox, they'll continue to make consoles until handhelds again basically take over. And this could be coming within the next decade. Which sounds kind of crazy because, again, we're looking at like 2035. But yeah, in 2035, I'm going to be 45 years old. I'll still be playing games probably, but probably not as much. And a lot of the millennials probably by that time are honestly going to drop out. Or they're going to have different interests, or they're going to have more disposable income so they can focus on hobbies that are more expensive. I could totally see that happening. And then it's just basically Gen Alpha, Gen Z and Gen A, and they'll completely control the market with their buying habits. So yeah, we'll honestly see. But yeah, realistically, regardless of what the companies are going to be doing, they're not going to be making stuff that doesn't sell. And yeah, if Alpha doesn't care about the console at all compared to the millennial, then yeah, that's where the consoles are going to be going. And I believe most millennials today, again, they'll quit at some point. Because yeah, a lot of us too are just getting frustrated with how games are going, with how our IPs seem to be getting destroyed, with how the companies just seem to be making the wrong decisions, chasing the trends, frustrating us, microtransactioning everything, lessening the quality, diluting the gameplay down. Man, Suicide Squad was, the little bit I played was a great example of that. Yeah, it's more, anyway, I won't get into it. It's horrible. But yeah, some people too of the millennials will probably also quit due to frustration, one thing or another. We're not going to feel like we're being listened to, and we're already not. Because again, we're not going to be the deciding factor within the next decade of where the spending habits are. It's going to be Gen Z and Gen Alpha and anyone else after that. So we're the old guard, quote unquote, going out. Just like we replaced Gen X, the other generations, they're going to be replacing us too. And streaming will be a main way for gamers to play. Eventually, I think that will really be the only way to actually play. Physical games won't be made anymore whatsoever, and even having hard drives is going to be kind of a weird thing, or even a difficult thing. We're even seeing too with actual disk drives. Excuse me, let me get it out there. But yeah, with actual disk drives, they're actually cutting back on production. The companies that make them. We've already had one or two companies that have quit making disk drives altogether, and then we have Sony that's actually cutting back Because again, they're just not selling. Again, they are going to follow with what the market is doing to continue to make money, to continue to stay competitive, to stay alive. And so this is just where it's going. The handheld war is here, and it will continue for the next decade, maybe the next couple of decades. I don't know. But this is why Xbox is changing their business model. They're seeing what's happening, what's coming. Okay, the millennials, wah, we still want our game console. Frick yeah, we do. Of course I do. So we'll get our console as long as we're buying it, right? For those that are on PC, well, they're going to stick with the PC until they die. So, hey, let's get our games over there. Fine. That'll work great. We have Game Pass. We also have Game Pass that can be accessed on mobile and handheld devices. Great. That's where Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be. So Xbox is literally changing everything that they're doing. And again, it's no longer just a console anymore. Eventually, consoles won't really be a main proponent, which is still just crazy to think about. But I think Sony is realizing this too. They're now putting games over to other platforms. They're selling their publishing rights to the actual developers, where the developers even want to put the games on Xbox, again, just to try to get as many sales as they can. And then, too, even Sony is also putting on games day and date, basically day one of launch, over on PC, and even some games over to Switch, which is pretty crazy. And I'm sure there's even been more deals already for the Switch too, for all of the companies. So again, if you just have a broader consumer base, you're going to, generally speaking, sell more copies, and you're going to make more money. And that's how these companies are basically being sustainable. The exclusivity, the whole console war thing, it's over. It's over. I think Nintendo will try to hold on to that as long as possible. But even just realizing recently, we had Pal World, which is kind of like Pokemon, right? We all know that. And then, too, I just saw another game not too long ago called Warside that looks very much and very similar to Advanced Wars. That maybe some of, like you and I got to play on Game Boy SPs. Which, again, is pretty crazy. Because, again, if one company can do it and get away with it, so can other companies. And if one game can have heavy inspiration, they all can. So Nintendo has their own problem that they've been fighting for so long, but somebody finally figured it out. And Nintendo cannot remove Pal World directly, and that shows a chink in the armor. And so I think even Nintendo is going to have to realize, hey, as we start to lose maybe our market share or some value, which again, this is going to take some time. It's not like this is going to happen over the next few years. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that the game is completely changing for all of the console companies. And basically everything is probably going to be going to PC. Or eventually everything's going to be streamed, or there's going to be partnerships for like Game Pass and other services that will be created by then. And it's going to be a very different gaming landscape for everything. How you see it today, how we see it today, man, appreciate it for what it is. Because it's not going to stay that way. So, hey, if you enjoyed the States of Gaming, I do these whenever there's actually something to chat about, something to talk about. These aren't like coming out on a regular basis. But yeah, when there's actually something to discuss, I do these. And along with everything else. So you can like and sub, all that jazz. That helps out the algorithms. Please do also share these with other people. That helps out the algorithms too. But yeah, too, these States of Gaming, I just want to get it out there for other people that like this kind of analysis and kind of thought process. And then, yeah, you can always follow me at GamingGarbage22 over at YouTube. And then you can also follow me over at Twitch, where everything I do gets ported over there first. And then I eventually get it over to YouTube, kind of more or less on a schedule. So thanks for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you guys on the next one. And we did beat the dragon, by the way, which was pretty sweet. I'll let you see it. Hey, there we go. Perfect. And yeah, that dragon was nothing compared to, what's his face? Bale at the very top of the mountain. He's horrible. Anyway, have a good one, folks.